Although the African captives crammed into the holds of the Barbados packet had no way of knowing it, the ship's captain wanted them to survive the Atlantic crossing. Adam Bird was a veteran captain, and one of 100 or so Liverpool-based slave traders that sailed to Africa in 1805. He knew that every person who died during the voyage represented a financial loss. Bird and his 34-man crew began trading near the mouth of the Grand Mesurado River, a sparsely populated region in what is now Liberia, in November 1805. Within a few months, they had transformed their ship into a floating prison for 270 captive Africans. Bird was probably eager to set sail, given the higher-than-average likelihood of revolt on the windward coast, the hazards of sailing in a region with few natural harbors, and steep beaches pounded by heavy surf, and most important, because the longer he stayed, the more captives he would lose. As Bird knew all too well, transporting human commodities was a risky business, infused with death. As the ship full of captives followed the trade winds south into the Atlantic, it was not destined, as its name suggested, for Britain's oldest West Indian colony, where the soil had been depleted after a century and a half of intensive sugar cultivation. Instead, it headed toward a former Dutch colony, 500 miles south of Barbados, that had recently become the new frontier of Caribbean slavery, Berbice. By late March 1806, after some 2 months at sea, the Barbados packet approached its destination. Navigation along the Guianas, a 900-mile stretch of muddy coastline between the Orinoco and Amazon rivers, was dangerous and difficult. The brackish water was shallow, and a seemingly endless series of shoals, sandbars, and mudflats shifted faster than cartographers could update their maps. Thousands of rivers and creeks carved through the continent, dragging silt dozens of miles into the Atlantic, but none provided a natural harbor. Even the captives, who had no experience with open ocean navigation and no idea where they were headed, could see that they were nearing land. The first clue was the change in the ocean's color, which transformed, as another British traveler observed, from being hitherto as clear as an emerald to thicker and more impregnated with mud as the ship neared the coast. But even once land was in sight, it offered few landmarks to help navigators. The very low and woody land, one captain cautioned, appears in all parts so much alike that the most experienced pilots are frequently deceived. A virtually endless line of mangrove forest backed by swampy savannas was only occasionally interrupted by sparse signs of human settlement, planters' whitewashed homes, slaves' thatched roof cottages, and fields of cotton and sugar that stretched to the horizon. Unlike his disoriented captives, Captain Bird was familiar with this coastline, having delivered his most recent cargo of slaves to Berbice's western neighbor, Demerara, the previous April. Toward the end of March, the Barbados packet reached its port of call, the mouth of the 300-mile-long Berbice River, divided in two by Crab Island and guarded by the modest battery of Fort St. Andrews on the east bank. A couple miles upriver, sandwiched between the Berbice and its tributary, the Kanji River, was New Amsterdam, the colony's ramshackle capital. It was an unimpressive sight. Scattered wooden houses and offices, a couple of brick buildings in disrepair, and unpaved streets bordered by canals. The few thousand residents of the town, most of whom were enslaved, probably smelled the Barbados packet before they saw it. So bad was the stench of slave ships after months at sea. The blood, urine, vomit, and feces produced by hundreds of captives made a noxious mixture. Of the human cargo, 247 Africans had survived the Atlantic crossing, while 23 died somewhere en route, their bodies thrown to the sharks. Yet as Bird and his crew began preparing the survivors for presentation to potential buyers, he may have congratulated himself on a successful voyage. There had been no major outbreak of smallpox, yaws, or dysentery, no insurrection, and the 9% mortality rate was predictable wastage, a normal part of doing business in human flesh. For Berbice's European colonists, the arrival of the Barbados packet was an exciting spectacle. They turned out in droves to buy new laborers, or simply gawk at the newly arrived saltwater slaves. Few transatlantic ships, and even fewer slavers, landed directly at Berbice. The river's channel was too narrow and shallow for large vessels. Moreover, just 70 miles to the west, captains found a better harbor, easier coastal access, and a larger market for slaves at the mouth of the Demerara River.